Happy Mario Day. It's the LP Podcast. More specifically, Happy Tuesday. It's the day of the week where I do more talking than playing of Nintendo games, but Nintendo's the topic all the same. Specifically, the aforementioned Mario Day. Yes, March 10th is Mario Day. I actually don't think that there's any particular reason why it is Mario Day. I think it's just because of MAR 10 looking something like Mario. Either which way, Nintendo has bought into it completely, even having themselves a presentation on the franchise itself. And we'll talk today about a couple of the things, or really all of the things, that they showcased. Some of them more important than others, and frankly, I'd be lying to you if I told you that any of them were extraordinarily exciting. But it's all good news. It's all news in general, and that's fun, right? So first and foremost, I guess the biggest little blurb that we received was a new Super Mario Brothers movie is officially in development. And it's no surprise, right? Especially if you've listened to this podcast for any amount of episodes, you'd know that we are well familiar with the financial successes that the Mario Brothers movie experienced, and naturally, the production of a second one was all but guaranteed. Right? When you produce a film and it shoots into the top 3 highest grossing films of that specific genre, animated movies, specifically for the Mario Brothers movie, well, I mean, there's just no way that you're not going to make another one. Now, once they announced that they were working on a Zelda movie, granted it's live action, not animated, so a bit of a departure from what the Super Mario Brothers movie was, but once they announced working on that, I thought that maybe they would kind of hold off and see how that does. But no, Nintendo is full steam ahead. All right. They have diversified themselves. And while the Mario Brothers movie may be something of a toe dipping to test the waters, they tested the waters and found that they were quite fine. And it looks like they're ready to dive ahead full steam. And I hope it goes well, right? I mean, obviously, the Zelda movie is not supposed to come out until 2025. You see here that the new Super Mario Brothers movie is not scheduled to be released until 2026. And if they take any pages from the book of 2023's Super Mario Brothers movie, they'll be delayed, right? Because that was delayed. It was originally going to be released in 2022. As we all know, it came out early 2023. So we'll see. We'll see. Either which way, I expect Nintendo to take their time on it. Of course, 2026 is already taking their time, but I expect them to take their time on it and produce as good of a movie as possible, rife with references and Easter eggs for fans as well as newcomers alike. Moving on, none of the news to follow, I don't think, is as exciting as that. I mean, let's see. Release dates for the 2 upcoming games, Thousand Year Door and Luigi's Mansion 2. 2 remakes coming to the Nintendo Switch. So it looks like Thousand Year Door comes to us May 23rd, which is actually just over 2 months away. So that's not too terribly far, and it looks fantastic, right? You see the screenshot here. It's a little bit desaturated, is something I've been thinking from a lot of the screenshots and images that I've seen of it. It looks great, I will say, but it does look like they cranked the saturation knob a little bit to the left, which is interesting. I mean, I think that helps play into the remastered look. But goodness me, I love my colors, right? So I want the more saturated. Either which way, I'm still gonna get it, still gonna play it. It's a great game already, and I'm very curious to see what they have added into it, because you know that it's not going to be just, a direct port of the game. There's going to be something, right? Even in Wind Waker HD, we saw how they added, the special sail that helped you sail faster. Obviously, there's not going to be any sailing on the King of Red Lions in Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, but perhaps there'll be something similar to that, right? I suppose we'll have to see. As far as the other side of that coin, that very same announcement, Luigi's Mansion 2 got a release date a month later, June 27th. So they both fall into essentially the first half of the year. I know Luigi's Mansion actually is a slight bit into the second, but in the first, we'll call it 7 months, both of those release. And do we have anything significant planned from Nintendo after that? right? Obviously, we've had Mario vs. Donkey Kong coming out earlier this year. We have Princess Peach Showtime releasing in 10 days. And then these two games here in the next few months. It's going to be very interesting to see what Nintendo does this holiday season to continue to drive revenue, because the subject months ago was their next console, right? They're like, oh, we may get a new Nintendo console for this holiday season, maybe this fall, maybe this winter. And now that looks even less likely than ever before. It's really hard to say, because I'm sure they have development teams, working around the clock, or working 9 to 5, or working whatever, shift to produce quality games. But given the relative lack of disclosures concerning the second half of the year, I don't necessarily know that I would call it concerning, right? Because I'm not a shareholder, so it's not really a huge deal to me what their financial situation, other than, I want them to do well financially so that they continue to produce games. It's just very interesting to see that there is not necessarily a lot planned for the later half of this year. So more to come on that. Moving on, for Mario Day, Switch Online added 3 new Mario titles. We've got Game Boy's Dr. Mario, Game Boy Color's Mario Golf, and Mario Tennis. Arriving, of course, on today, actually. So look at that. They were announced on Mario Day on the 10th, but they were released. They are active. They are available to be played March 12th, today. So if you're into those, by all means. Dr. Mario is a good game. I will always have Fever stuck in my head. I don't know why. It's just, it's one of those things that lives rent-free in my brain. One of those video game songs. Mario Golf and Mario Tennis, to be honest with you, I did prefer the 3D consoles, the N64 specifically, versions of them. But hey, it's never a bad thing when you're getting more access to more games on Nintendo Switch Online, right? Because the subscription price is not changing. It's staying the same. And if you're subscribed to it, you're just almost getting more value for your buck every time an announcement like this is unearthed. So if you do subscribe, like I do, and I suppose I'm speaking to myself in some capacity, you do well to at least play them a little bit, right? Just to get that value out of it. Why not, huh? Why not? Moving on, it would seem that games manifesting themselves digitally are not the only announcements, but games manifesting themselves physically. And by games, I mean Lego. Maybe not a game, more of a 3D puzzle. But you know what I'm saying. You play with it. You play games, you play with you got it. Anyways, Lego Mario Kart set coming next year, as was announced on Mario Day. So that's pretty interesting to me. I mean, Nintendo and Lego have done a number of collaborations already. I'd have to imagine they're continually working on more and more. I have a Mario set somewhere around here. It used to sit on my desk, but of course we moved, so, things are in boxes. But very good to see that their relationship remains healthy and they continue to develop new products. A Mario Kart Lego set does have a lot of potential, too. I mean, selfishly, I would like to get it. I enjoy both brands, right? Lego and Mario, specifically Mario Kart. But I think that that's something that can do well as a product, right? I think that a lot of parents will have interest in that from their own histories and, Mario Kart, Super Mario Kart, Mario Kart 64, as well as Lego. And then that also appeals to the next sort of generation that is now being raised almost on things like the Mario movie, right? And with them having a sequel, we'll circle back and talk about that briefly. The sequel to the Mario movie and the importance that that's going to play in their continued mental market share. Because you think of things like Frozen, right? Frozen 1, Frozen 2, Disney's smash hits that are also right in the top 3 for highest grossing animated films. What that sort of did for quote unquote Disney children. I mean, Elsa became her own brand. Almost. You know what I'm saying? And I know we're kind of diverting the topic here from Nintendo to Disney, but I think that it's irrelevant because the same sort of thing, I think, is what we're seeing happening here with Mario. Because just this past Halloween season, do you see how many extra Marios and Princess Peaches and Luigis there were? Tons. All right. Mario has always been relatively mainstream as far as video games go, but I think that the success of 2023's movie, the announcement of 2026 movie, and the hopeful success of that as well is just going to continue to drive that mental market share that solidifies it as more of a household name than simply more of a household video game. You know what I'm saying? I suppose we'll see. Ultimately, all I can ask for in that regard is that Nintendo doesn't divert too many resources into that, and I can't imagine they will. One thing that we know from Nintendo is that they are extraordinarily consistent, right? They have always been about themselves. Selfishly, maybe a little bit, yes, but also staying true to their brand. They have no qualms about doing something when no other publisher or developer is doing it that way. You know what I'm saying? Nintendo very much stays in their lane. So I don't think that they will take too much of a departure from their standards or from their overall personality, even despite the success of the movies. I think all it's going to do is help them, we've used this word how many times, diversify. They opened up the studio, right? I think it's going to allow them to grow that way. And I think we as fans will all benefit from it. Or hopefully, maybe it'll suck. Who knows? Anyways, that is all. All right. Everything we had to talk about today was all for the Mario Day announcements. And there really weren't a great many. Of course, I'm always hoping for things, like a Mario Sunshine sequel or another 3D Mario in general. But alas, that's going to have to wait for a different day. Probably for whenever the Nintendo next console comes out. For goodness gracious, won't that be a heavy news day when that gets announced? Jim and Christmas, rife with speculation, but less of that today in this situation. So thank you so much for watching. I'm LP. I do this every Tuesday, and I hope I get to see you back here again next time.